Involuntary or obligatory responses. One of the primary challenges in studying very young infants is that they have limited motor control. They cannot hold their heads up for short amounts of time, much less grab an interesting toy, play the piano, or turn a doorknob. As a result, infants cannot actively engage with the environment in the same way as older children and adults. For this reason, developmental scientists have designed research methods that assess involuntary or obligatory responses. These are behaviors in which people engage without much conscious effort or thought. For example, think about the last time you heard her name at a party. You likely turned your head to see who was talking without even thinking about it. Infants and young children also demonstrate involuntary responses to stimuli in the environment. When infants hear the voice of their mother, for instance, their heart rate increases, whereas if they hear the voice of a stranger, their heart rate decreases. Researchers study involuntary behaviors to better understand what infants know about the world around them. One research method that capitalizes on involuntary or obligatory responses is a procedure known as habituation. In habituation studies, infants are presented with a stimulus, such as a photograph of a face, over and over again until they become bored with it. When infants become bored, they look away from the picture. If infants are then shown a new picture, such as a photograph of a different face, their interest returns and they look at the new picture. This is a phenomenon known as dishabituation. Habituation procedures work because infants generally look longer at novel stimuli relative to items that are familiar to them. This research technique takes advantage of involuntary or obligatory responses because infants are constantly looking around and observing their environments. They do not have to be taught to engage with the world in this way. One classic habituation study was conducted by Baillargeon and colleagues. These researchers were interested in the concept of object permanence, or the understanding that objects exist even when they cannot be seen or heard. For example, you know your toothbrush exists even though you are probably not able to see it right to this second. To investigate object permanence in 5-month-old infants, the researchers used a violation of expectation paradigm. The researchers first habituated infants to an opaque screen that moved back and forth like a drawbridge. Once infants were bored with the moving screen, they were shown 2 different scenarios to test their understanding of physical events. In both of these test scenarios, an opaque box was placed behind the moving screen. What differed between these 2 scenarios, however, was whether they confirmed or violated the solidity principle, the idea that 2 solid objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. In the possible scenario, infants watched as the moving drawbridge stopped when it hit the opaque box, as would be expected based on this principle. In the impossible scenario, the drawbridge appeared to move right through the space that was occupied by the opaque box. This impossible scenario violates the solidity principle in the same way as if you got out of your chair and walked through a wall, reappearing on the other side. The results of this study revealed that infants look longer at the impossible test event than the possible test event. The authors suggested that infants reacted in this way because they were surprised. The demonstration went against their expectations that two solids cannot move through one another. The findings indicated that 5-month-old infants understood that the box continued to exist even when they could not see it. Subsequent studies indicated that 3.5 to 4.5-month-old infants also demonstrate object permanence under similar test conditions. And these findings are notable because they suggest that infants understand object permanence much earlier than had been previously reported by researchers examining voluntary responses. Research Methods in Developmental Psychology by Angela Lukowski and Helen Milojevic is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 4.0 international license.